So I'm Kathleen Dunlop. I'm a global brand director in marketing at Unilever.
Well, congrats on winning an Effie for the Vaseline Project.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that campaign.
The project itself, the Vaseline Healing Project, is a partnership with an international NGO, Direct Relief, to deliver aid to areas that have been hit by natural disaster or a crisis or are excluded from traditional medical systems due to extreme poverty.
And what made you create that campaign? What was the key insight, or what were you driving towards?
So the key insight behind the campaign is the same as the key insight behind the program itself, which is that there is this very real, urgent need for access to medical care, and in particular skin care, in these kinds of areas hit by natural disasters, conflict, crisis zones. The breakthrough for us came when we took our brand tagline, the healing power of Vaseline, and turned that into a question and asked ourselves, where is our healing power really needed? Where is it urgently needed? Is there somewhere in the world where we can make a really positive difference through our product and what our product stands for, the healing power of Vaseline? And that led us to do exploratory interviews with UNHCR, which is the UN Agency for Refugees, Doctors Without Borders, the Centers for Disease Control, and we found out through that actually Vaseline jelly, was already being used in some of these places, and we weren't a part of it. So Doctors Without Borders, in the 5 years prior to when we spoke to them, had used 1.5 tons of Vaseline jelly in their field hospitals. And when we heard that, and we also heard from UNHCR that skin conditions are in the top 10 medical issues that they see in refugee camps, we said, we need to do something. Like they're practically calling us by name. And so it's time for us to do something. And that's what led to the Vaseline Healing Project.
So what was the process like, getting from that insight and all those conversations and research to the actual campaign?
So the same insight that led to the campaign is that program insight of the real need for Vaseline. And the way we boiled it down, together with our creative agency BBH, into a clear, focused insight for the brief was that it's exactly that same product that you have in your bathroom and I have in my medicine cabinet, and we probably all have somewhere, and maybe we've forgotten about it. It's that same ordinary product that is doing extraordinary things in these extreme places. And literally, the film that we created in the end took scenes from what we call Vaseline's front line, these areas that have been hit by natural disasters or refugee camps, and juxtaposed them with scenes from ordinary life. And so the product appears practically on every scene in the film, but very naturally, because it's juxtaposing how it's used in these extraordinary circumstances with the very ordinary circumstances in your life. And we found that was really the best way to bring this story to life.
And then how did Viola Davis get involved? Because she's involved as well.
Yes. So at one point, together with the local team in the US, we said, we can do a TV and print and digital campaign, or we could take some of that money and find a spokesperson who is interested in these kinds of causes and really fits naturally with it, and use our money there instead to draw attention to this. And that led us to Viola Davis, who is lovely to work with and a real believer, and such a passionate advocate for people who are kind of forgotten by traditional medical systems, who are underinsured or not insured at all. And so she's been a passionate advocate for the program here in the United States.
Was there anything about the campaign that surprised you?
A lot of things surprised me, but I wouldn't say, it's not so much that was a surprise as more as kind of a delight. Strange word to use, delight, when you're talking about really difficult circumstances that people are living through. But delighted that our product really could make a difference. There was a moment when we had the idea, we'd done our exploratory interviews, and we sort of had this concept, and we started second guessing ourselves internally. We started saying to ourselves, yeah, but it's just, Vaseline jelly at the end of the day. Are we making too big a deal out of this? And right about that time, an article was published in the Washington Post by two dermatologists, American dermatologists, Dr. Jabber and Dr. Bando, who had just returned from Jordan. They paid their own way to go and work in the refugee camps there. And they came back and they wrote an article, and in it they said, what Syrian doctors need most is Vaseline. They actually named the brand. And they talked about all the same kinds of issues, very sort of ordinary, mundane things that we wouldn't think twice about, but when you don't have the right products to treat them, then they can turn into something much more dangerous. So if you're living in a refugee camp where it's crowded, you don't have access to clean water all the time, and maybe you're living exposed to the elements, then something like a simple cut can get infected and turn into something that could even be life-threatening. So they wrote some of these stories in their article, and we immediately contacted them, found out more. They joined our advisory board, and as they say, the rest is history. But that was kind of a stroke of luck for that to come along just at that moment, the sort of external validation that we were onto something, and that gave us that extra boost of courage to move forward.
So how did the team play a role? I mean, there's a team behind you of research
Absolutely.
and all these NGO partner as well.
Yeah. So one of the most critical things was finding the right partners. So we work with Direct Relief, which is probably the biggest international NGO that does disaster relief that you've never heard of. And the reason you've never heard of them is that they work with companies like us and take donations in kind. They work with all the big pharma companies, a lot of consumer products companies. They get transport donated by FedEx and Virgin Atlantic. They get their logistics software, which is the same software Unilever supply chain runs. They get it donated by SAP. So they work with us. They're behind the scenes. They're not out in front, sort of marketing to consumers and accepting individual donations. But because they know how to work with companies, because they do this, they track all their donations, and they have a network of clinics that they work with in over 70 countries and all 50 states. So, when we heard, they used all the right words, like when we heard they run SAP just the way we do, like they're our partner. They understand us, they get us, and they really know disaster relief. So we know that we're in good hands with them, and we have to take their advice. Absolutely, this isn't our expertise. The other partners are our advisory board. So the first two dermatologists that I mentioned from the States, Dr. Bando and Dr. Jabber, joined our advisory board. And then Direct Relief also helped us identify dermatologists in South Africa and India and the UK, and even a dermatological nurse in Canada who've joined our advisory board. And they help ensure that what we're doing is really making a positive impact, and that we're doing it in the most efficient and effective way possible. And our role then on the team is to stay flexible and open-minded, and when they give us advice that we need to change, that we need to flex. But then there's also that's on the program side, all the team. There's a huge team at Unilever involved in this, in running the program itself, ensuring that the product gets to Direct Relief on time, and developing the communications. So that's our agency partners, BBH, our PR agency, Edelman, our comms planning partner, PhD, and without them, we wouldn't have the campaign that we have, absolutely.
So winning in Effie is all about marketing effectiveness. So how do you define marketing effectiveness?
It's a big question. So in the beginning, what led to this, we're marketers at Unilever, and Unilever has our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And so we definitely have the permission on any brand in Unilever to find a brand purpose, and make that the center of our communications and use that to drive the business. So we're encouraged to do that, but we're not mandated to do it. And so back in the beginning, we said, well, we have this business objective on Vaseline. It's a brand that's 150 years old. As I already said before, you might have it in your bathroom somewhere and you've forgotten where it is, right. And you probably don't use it very often. And that's our business problem. We needed to remind the people who buy this product, who have it forgotten in their bathrooms, how to use it, when to use it, and make them proud to use it again. And when we looked at the examples of brands in Unilever and outside that have done this really well, examples like Dove come to mind, or Lifebuoy soap, another Unilever brand. And they've done it through communicating their brand purpose. So we set out on this mission to find what could we do that's worth talking about that would get people to feel proud and fall in love with this brand again. So effective marketing finds that story, that relevant story that's going to tap into, the emotion you want to elicit from the people who buy your products and drive the business with it. And that's what this did. And I can give you one example of a consumer we talked to in focus groups early on, and we showed the film. And afterwards, she said, that makes me want to take that little tub of Vaseline that's in my medicine cabinet and dig it out from the back and put it right in front so that I see it every day when I open my medicine cabinet. And we thought, we've got it. That's exactly the response we want. It made her feel proud to use this product. By putting it out in front, it would remind her to use it every day, so driving consumption. But she felt somehow connected through the stories we were telling in her ordinary everyday life to people living through really extraordinary circumstances halfway across the world. And that connection ran right through our product. You couldn't ask for more effective marketing than that.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.